Adaptations have been a big topic in Target this year, and that's not new. They haven't exactly been fan favorites in the past. At their best, they're received moderately with a "this is okay, I guess, but I'd rather watch or play the original version." At their worst, they're abominations that don't even deserve to know the sweet release of death. Or, just not being worth watching or playing more than once. So yeah, adaptations are dumb and fans are almost certain to hate them. But they're not really for the fans most times. Here's why. Everybody hates the Netflix Death Note adaptation. Well, that's not necessarily true. There's a fair amount of people that liked, or at the very least didn't mind it. Those people aren't giant Death Note fans to begin with, and therefore lack major expectations. Ignorance is bliss, as it were. Some people know the name, but never watched the original, and the adaptation sparks their interest just enough to dive in for an hour or so, rather than watching a full season of an anime. Those are the people these sorts of things are made for, and I think it's okay to target those people. That's one reason why I think it's irrational to hate them in the first place. Consider a different form of adaptations, reboots. Teen Titans Go comes to mind and is the most obvious example of what I'm talking about here. Fans of the original Teen Titans hate that show and typically talk about how it's dumb and it's missing the point of the original. They just fill the show with dumb jokes and leave out all the substance, action, and stakes of the original. Where's the Raven Trigon arc, they may be saying, but it's clear that was intentional. They didn't aim to translate that show one-to-one for a new generation. They wanted to take bits from that show that would work well and really drive that point home. The jokes in Teen Titans Go aren't that foreign in the context of the original animated show. There's just more of them here. Or in the video game world, games like Metroid Prime Federation Force, any merits that game has on its own don't matter because it's not Metroid. Metroid is about solitude, not teamwork. We want a Metroid game, they may say. Or, to point the mirror at myself for a bit, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. It may have Mario in it, but to me, it's not really a Mario game, and that goes to more things than the gameplay, like I touched on in my last video. Thing is, none of these things are aiming to have the same point. They're for different audiences. They may expect some existing fans to tune in based on the brand recognition, but the main goal of adaptations is to win over new fans. Most of the ones I want to talk about here, anyway. Obviously, the franchises as they already existed didn't win everybody over, so why use the same formula? Like Metroid, those games don't sell. People like things that originate from the series just fine in Smash Bros games, but the Metroid games as they are don't exactly set the world on fire in regards to sales. Certainly not in the way the love for characters like Samus and Ridley would lead people to believe. Why not take the part that is widely loved, the brand itself, and try to find success for that thing on a different playing field? And I know the characters in Federation Force aren't the same, but the character of Samus didn't matter a whole lot for her appeal in Smash always. Many didn't know she was a woman until Super Smash Bros. Brawl when Zero Suit Samus was introduced. The cool thing about Metroid was the badass armor and weapons. Well, that part is represented in full with Federation Force. Only difference is you're not Samus and you can play with friends, which I admit is polarizing because, like I said jokingly earlier, Metroid really is about solitude. But not every game needs to be this super canon, you play Samus and do A, B, and C until Z. The Metroid world is big enough to include more bounty hunters than just Samus. After all, the game isn't called Samus Path to Loneliness, it's called Metroid. Are Metroids in the game? Okay, cool, it checks out. And don't get me wrong, it's valid to see these themes in a franchise and begin to love and expect those themes to persist, but if that theme isn't core to the world, then there's room to introduce new ones. Meaning, Metroid's lore isn't that Samus is the last existing bounty hunter, so why shouldn't they be allowed to experiment and add more bounty hunters? Sometimes adaptations' aim is to meet somewhere in the middle, like Ghost in the Shell, the live action film that released earlier this year. A major point of contention was the casting of Scarlet as Ghost in the Shell's protagonist. Major. This is obviously in part because of a different problem that exists in film, being that big movie studios don't cast very many actors that are minorities and whatnot, which is fair, they don't, but if they wanted this movie to appease more than fans of the franchise, what other options do they have? The rationale they have for this particular casting decision makes sense to me in this regard. Now, in a movie based on a giant IP, I think it's fair to expect that casting is more worried about accuracy than it is about the fame of the actors they cast. Ghost in the Shell doesn't fit the bill, but in order to fulfill the vision for the movie the creators had, they needed it to do well. How do you do that? Sell the masses on what they know, an A-list actress. Now, the fact that there are no A-list Asian actresses, I 100% agree with being a problem, but Ghost in the Shell isn't the movie that would rectify that. Again, you need a big brand to make big actors. Ghost in the Shell isn't that. That casting isn't what's wrong with that movie. Nerdwriter 1 has a really good video on its problems, which I'll link in the card on the top right. Check it out after this. So let's come back to Death Note. Some would argue that it does a poor job at translating the anime to film, and that the themes aren't consistent and characters like Ryuk aren't in character because of seemingly different motives and goals, or that Light/Kira isn't a big enough self-aggrandizing jerk to make his character interesting, or that L is black. All of those criticisms acknowledge that the Netflix Death Note film is inherently different, and in the mind of diehard fans, different is bad, which given the aim can be true for adaptations, but differences alone aren't always bad, even in the realm of adaptations. If the difference serves as a tool for artistic expression, I say go for it, especially if it's done in a way that's received well by a fair amount of people that have seen it. The Death Note anime and manga are about what happens when a frankly crazy man develops a heavy-handed definition of justice and thereby peace, and because of those unique ideals and the newfound power he wields, he's only one worthy and self-important enough to believe he and only he can accomplish that vision for peace, and how that clashes with L and his idea of justice. The Netflix adaptation is really in stark contrast with that. It's a new take on the world and Light's view on the world. This, I think, is a bit more grounded. It's human. He struggles with being Kira pretty much throughout the entirety of the movie. He doesn't magically transform into this unfeeling godlike or whatever. Light wasn't necessarily burdened by the state of the world. He kind of just accepts the whole of it, minus things that directly affected him. He doesn't start to be this symbol of justice until he gets the nudge from Misa, who, again, I found to be more grounded in the film, in some ways at least. Why would this ditzy model fall in love with someone based on their knack for killing people? The Netflix Misa is cunning, unfeeling, and devious, a compliment to Light's newfound conscience in this adaptation. She pushes the story forward, giving a role beyond that girl that loves the anti-hero. And beyond this, the movie leaves room for more, which could further flesh out this version of the world. And that's what a lot of the Netflix film seems to want to do, recontextualize some of the characters and in some ways ground them in reality, and yes, Americanize them, which is fine. Anime versions of shows like Powerpuff Girls are fine with fans of Powerpuff Girls. Why can't Death Note fans accept a new take on what they love in the same way? I do want to stress that I'm not trying to tell you to love adaptations, because on the whole, they're usually uninspired and cash grabby. Even some of the examples I talked about are guilty of that. I think Netflix's Death Note is different though. I think that film is what happens when a fan gets a hold of a franchise they like with the opportunity to make changes. What would you do in that situation? To be clear, I'm not telling you to love that either. My only point is that differences aren't what make adaptations bad. They're not always meant for fans, and they're just not super good at making that clear. But those are my thoughts. What do you think? Do you like any changes made in an unpopular adaptation or reboot? Or do you think they're all terrible and should never exist ever? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, share it with a friend that also has something to say about adaptations or reboots. Good or bad, I want to talk to him or her. And watch more Action Point. Here's a playlist on the left. On the right, we have a special video YouTube knows you'll absolutely love. Also, subscribe and click the bell for even more videos like this and those every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Okay, that's it for me. See you next week.